For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale. The Ukraine crisis rages on even if there are signs that Russia and Ukraine are talking and Russia is asking for some kind of a settlement. How this crisis will pan out is anybody's guess. But no matter how it pans out, no matter how it is settled, if at all, the ramifications for major global power equations are completely changing as the crisis erupted as well as is going on. To talk about how China looks at the crisis, how China will take advantage or will be disadvantaged by the crisis, how India should look at a threat from China, and what should be the equation that one should look for between US and China is something that we're going to talk about with our special guest today, Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, very familiar face on StratNews Global, a China specialist, but also a geopolitical observer of issues between major global powers. Mr. Ranade, thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to our meeting here.
So, what I wanted to ask you to begin with is that while Russia has its reasons to do what it has done in Ukraine, and the crisis with Europe or between Russia and NATO and Russia and Europe rages on, how do you think China is looking at this entire development in Europe or the Russian attempted invasion of Ukraine, if I may call it that, because it is not yet complete?
You're quite right. Actually, there are 2-3 things which I would say that we need to note out. Firstly, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and what they're doing, so the so-called pronouncements by Putin, they make it very clear that the international world order, as it has existed after the Cold War, is today under challenge. And Putin has been very clear. I think he's put the US on notice and the world order on notice. So that's one thing that the Chinese have noted. Related with this is Putin's visit to Beijing on the 4th of February.
Right.
One of the few countries that he has personally gone to since COVID, since the outbreak of COVID. And that meeting, I think, was quite relevant. They had, of course, a lengthy meeting, a lengthy joint statement. But noticeable in that joint statement were the references to the two of them together trying to bring about a more acceptable and democratic international world order. In other words, and this was later on explained by the Chinese side, that the hegemony that is being exercised on the world, that has to be changed.
Right.
So here we
see
Western
hegemony here.
Western hegemony.
Right.
So here I think we see the two sides in sync. And that has portents for how we are going to see things as they develop.
Right.
The second thing, which I think we need to take notice of, is that Putin and Xi Jinping are both apparatchiks of their own communist parties and systems. So they have an ideological, shall I say, affinity as far as ideological moorings are concerned.
Right.
So that's the other factor. As far as China is concerned, I think they're looking at it as an opportunity.
Okay.
At the same time, they're very intently watching the US and the West. If they come out with harsher measures against Russia, if they start widening the scope of the financial sanctions,
right,
then China will be very badly hit. They're very conscious of that. And I think they're now trying to distance themselves from outright support of Russia.
That was evident in the UN vote.
Exactly.
They abstained. Initially, they supported, then they abstained. And twice in succession, like India, they've abstained.
Right. But their statements, their press, of course, it is still biased in favor of China, but they have not gone too far.
Right.
And if I may just in conclusion make one more remark, I think when Putin came here, my own sense is that he certainly briefed Xi Jinping on what is going to happen. May not be the full detail, but he gave him a fair insight into what he's going to do.
What he was anticipating and
what he was going to do.
Yeah,
and the indicators of that are the manner in which he withdrew the forces from the borders with China for deployment elsewhere.
Right.
And the fact that Xi Jinping had a Politburo meeting immediately after that.
Right.
Of course, it appears that Xi Jinping didn't share that briefing with his own colleagues, but maybe people got an indication and that was discussed in the Politburo, after which there was a bit of modulation.
Right.
So I just thought I should.
No, that of
mention
course is an
point.
extremely important point. Related to that is going forward, how would China see the situation panning out in Ukraine if it doesn't go in favor of, say, Russia? Does it modulate its own position with Russia, or does it support Russia outright? Or then it also thinks that if Russia could do it to Ukraine, which is a sovereign country, there could be others who would try the same thing in, say, Xinjiang or Tibet. Would that make them uncomfortable as far as the outcomes are concerned?
Well, you blended in three questions in
Right.
one. But
Yes.
your last point
Yeah.
about China being worried that
Right.
someone else may attempt the same thing.
Yes.
That worry was reflected, including in the joint statement also,
Right.
when both sides spoke of color revolutions. Of course, Putin was talking about the color revolution in Ukraine
Right.
and his concern that it may spread elsewhere.
Yes.
Xi Jinping's meaning was Tibet and Xinjiang.
Exactly.
So that is
Both
certainly-
have had their concerns.
both have.
Yeah.
And in fact, over the last year and a half or two, the Chinese media, there have been a lot of warnings about color revolutions because as the relationship with the United States deteriorated, they are worried that the US may attempt that inside China.
Right.
So that's one part.
Yes.
The second worry they have, to go to your other questions,
Yes.
is that Ukraine is a major supplier to China of grain, I think almost 70%.
Of the wheat, I think, goes from there.
And
Rapeseed oil.
and soybean.
Soybean, okay.
Oils and
Yeah.
apart from that, in the defense sector, of jet engines, etc., tanks, engines, they're all coming from Ukraine.
Right.
So China will certainly be affected. That could be compensated because Russia is also one of the world's largest grain
Sure.
suppliers.
Sure.
But that is a source of worry for
China.
the Chinese, and they would not like anything to happen to that part. But finally, I think they will be watching the US and the West very intently as to how they're going to react. There are two scenarios that we can see.
Right.
One, that Russia gets bogged down in the Ukraine, I
Yes.
think, which Biden would like to see.
Like they were in Afghanistan.
Like Afghanistan, and create, Ukraine will become a European Afghanistan, if we
Right.
can say, and Biden would like that because
Right.
that debilitates
Yes.
Russia. But the Chinese would be unhappy because that means that the US and the West will then look at China.
Right.
And despite the media not paying attention to the points that I mentioned about the ideological affinities,
Sure.
etc., the strategists in the US and the West, they're not going to forget it.
Right.
So they will have seen what has happened. And I think the focus of their attention will be China, which will make China uncomfortable.
Right.
But if China feels that there is a weakness there, then I'm afraid what we will see in this region is an attempt by China to dominate the Indo-Pacific, which will include their starting the part two, as I call it, of what they've started with us,
Yes.
and targeting Taiwan more directly.
Right.
May not be the main Taiwan island, but the outlying islands
yes.
they could grab, and that in itself will put Xi Jinping on track
Right.
for his third term and lifelong bid, as they
That's
say.
right.
But Xi Jinping is not a man to be underestimated, and I think seeing what Putin has done, the Chinese would be learning a lot of lessons.
Yeah, exactly. So coming to India specific, and you just mentioned it towards the end of your answer, that Xi Jinping then might be tempted to re-energize his campaign against India, or the kind of attempts that have been made along the line of actual control. How does India look at this? Should it worry? Because on the one hand, India is also, like China, dependent on Ukraine for its military technology or military supplies, and with Russia, much more. A weak Russia may not be in India's interest, but at the same time, India cannot go so openly to support Russia. So that's one part of the equation. But should India worry about Xi Jinping's designs on Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh?
I think India needs to be very worried. And unfortunately, over the years, we have not developed our indigenous defense industry. And until we do that, we are going to remain dependent on other countries.
Yes.
And I was very happy to see that Prime Minister Modi, I mean,
Exactly.
he has taken 2 steps already
Yes.
where he has banned certain
209
imports of
items
certain
actually.
items. But in fact, if you notice,
On 25th February, the day this happened.
he came out with the 3rd tranche,
Yes.
which is very good.
And also saying, laying down the red lines that this has to be done.
Yes. At the risk of maybe upsetting some of the viewers, let me also say that here I feel that the system has not backed
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi, because otherwise by now we should have made a lot of progress,
Right.
which we haven't.
Yes.
But that having been said, I think we need to be very concerned about the Chinese. As I said, Xi Jinping is a different kind of. I think when they first came in April, May, they
2020.
came in, 2020, they came in with an agenda.
Right.
Our counter buildup was rapid, so we blocked it.
Correct.
They've lost an element of surprise.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they will not attempt the second hit. Now, it could be 2 things that I look at.
Right.
One, a major push in Ladakh to remove
The
Daulat
block.
Beg Oldi from our possession, and therefore they take over that entire bit.
Right.
Or make a lunge in the northeast.
Right, in
at
Arunachal
Arunachal
Pradesh,
or
yes.
wherever. So these options are there with
On the
them.
table, yeah.
And here again, I would say, again, it's late, but it's starting.
Right.
Was the budget by Nirmala Sitharaman. Of course, maybe her background as defense minister helped.
Right.
When she came out with vibrant villages.
Yes.
And I think it's a great thing.
Yes.
Some of us have been talking about it earlier,
Correct.
maybe even mentioned it, but it's a great thing. It has to move forward.
Yes.
A lot to be done, but it's a step in the right direction. And I was also pleased that our new air chief, he also said that he has put his forces on high vigil.
Yes.
I think we're taking the right steps, but end of the day, it's difficult to say what they will do.
Right.
But I think a lot will depend on how Xi Jinping sees what Russia is doing.
Yeah.
They have just been raising the ante, actually.
Right.
But I think in this sector, Xi Jinping will try and do something. Finally, let me just say, with his party congress towards the end
I
of the
was
year,
just going to say in
where he's
October,
trying to get a
Third
term or a lifelong term, whatever. If he can do something and get away with it,
Right.
it will boost his
Chances
image.
or image, and then overcome the factional fight that might be there.
Exactly. But I don't think he'll get away with it. I think it will be fairly protracted and bloody if he tries
Exactly.
something.
That's
But that's a very strong possibility.
Yeah, it is. Therefore, final question. You mentioned Taiwan. He may be tempted to do this, but can the US afford to let him get away with it in Taiwan? Because if that happens, the one school of thought is that now that Europe has got re-energized, reunited against Russia because of Russia's actions, America doesn't have to worry about Europe so much because they will take care of themselves. So they can concentrate on the Indo-Pacific to contain China. Is that a strong possibility, or do you think China can still overcome US attention to Asia or to Indo-Pacific and become a preeminent power here?
I think we have seen a succession of US presidents, 3, identifying China as the primary threat.
Right.
And Biden also has followed that same course.
Right.
So I think that is what he would like to do, which is why I said that if Ukraine becomes Europe's Afghanistan,
Yes.
that means the fighting is essentially Ukraine, and Europe will support it.
Right.
Leaving America, who is actually, people won't like my saying it, but the big brother for the Europeans
Yes, of
too.
course, they are.
And leaving them free to take care of the rest of the world, which means China.
Right.
And I think that is what the Biden game plan is. So China won't get away in that sense. If by some chance the Americans don't pay attention to this, then I think America will cease to be a world power.
Yeah, and that's the that's the aim that the Chinese have anyway.
Chinese have?
By 2049,
Yeah.
they want to be the preeminent power.
But I
guess.
don't think that will happen, Nitin, because the Japanese, I don't see them accepting
Succumbing
it.
to it.
I don't see India accepting it.
No.
So I don't think
They have a
the
stiff
Chinese have it
competition
easy
on
now.
hand.
Yes.
And that having been said, I think it's a great overview of what's happening in major global power equations. I think this aspect is extremely essential to give attention to, because localized conflict that is happening right now, we don't know which way it will pan out. But as a final thought, would you think that this is one seminal moment after World War II where global world order is about to undergo major transformation?
Yes, I do think so. I think it's, as I said, a challenge to the world order that has been in place since the end of the Cold War.
Right.
I think it's a bid by a major nuclear power, which so far has been on par with the United States. Now it has economically sunk.
Right.
But it's a bid by them
Yes.
to revive their own, shall I say, status.
Right.
People are talking about Putin wanting to revive a Slavic empire. Others say a Rus empire. We don't know.
Yeah.
But still, he is trying to bring the United States,
Russia
up, which may not be very good news for China in the long run.
Yes.
But I think these are the things that are happening. And I expect that we will see a new world order once things settle down.
Yeah, so we are living in seminal times in that
seminal
sense.
times.
Thank you for your thoughts and thank you for the insight. Thanks very much. So, viewers, this is where you get a different perspective each time we hold discussions with experts like Mr. Ranade. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel in larger numbers and keep sending the feedback. You know where to reach us. Our social media handles are all visible to you on the screen. And of course, we welcome your suggestions and comments. Until the next time, it's goodbye.